Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Modern Market. This is our daily show from Monday to Friday at 7 a.m. Eastern Time, 12 p.m. GMT, every day of the week, where we discuss all things to do with the modern market. That is the crypto market, the NFT market, and how to make money by leveraging the internet and its latest technologies. My name is Bchek. I'm joined by my legendary co-host, Legendary, and we're going to get into everything that's been going on in the last 24 hours, noticing very much so that there's a lot of news, a lot of news at the moment. Going to try to stay on top of it all and give you the best lowdown that we can on what's been going on in the last 24 hours. And just as a reminder, before we do that, nothing that we say here is financial advice. This modern market is exceptionally risky. We do not know anything for sure, so please do proceed with caution and exercise your own judgment. Legendary, with that out of the way, how are you doing this morning? What is going on with you?
GM, doing quite well. We have a new member of our club, of the 100-hour club, because up to now it was obviously only the two of us hosting the show who spent more than 100 hours on the modern market. But Kusho has joined our ranks. Kusho has been now with us for more than 101 hours, 101 hours and 28 minutes to be precise.
Wow.
Decrypto is following 90 hours. Jack and Sammy are both very close to the 80-hour mark. So is Pixel Property. So is Greggy with 76, 75 hours respectively. And then we have Wainada, Signal, and Funky in the 50 to 60-hour range. And then we have Carlos, English, Joey, Yell, Odie, and Dao in the 40 to 50-hour range. But Kusha joined the 100-hour club.
Damn, that sounds like a real club. It sounds like a legit club that something needs to happen for. Gonna have to figure out what that means. What does it mean to be in the 100-hour club, Legendary? Does that mean you just have to work really hard during the mornings on the show? Does that mean he's basically employed?
It means that I worry about Kusho, that he spent 100 hours with us. That's definitely a potential danger to his mental health to spend that much time with us.
I love it. I think you've got to be a little bit crazy to be in the market anyway. I don't know. I might take the other side of that. I think he must be a very smart person. I'm drawing all kinds of very thoughtful, reasonable conclusions about the guy as a human being, despite not knowing him entirely. I think he's a very smart person. I think he's very intelligent. And I think he's a very great decision maker. I think that's the thing that stands out to me about Kusho. I think his decision making is one of his greatest qualities, actually. But to all the people who've been listening in for however long we've been running this thing for now, we appreciate you. You are all outstanding decision makers, honestly, like some of the best decision makers that I've seen on the internet, at least for some time. So that is one of my definitive opinions for now. Whether that extends to the trading of the JPEGs, we don't know. But at least in terms of your how you allocate your attention, I can't really blame you. Legendary, any thoughts before we discuss some other stuff and get into the headlines in a minute?
No, fair enough, fair enough. The only thing that unfortunately doesn't seem to be working that great in the tracking is the number of comments, because I would love to know who our top commenters are. But I know for a fact that Funky and Dao are very, very high on that list, but it doesn't really reflect on Super Spaces. So that seems to be lagging a bit. But I would love to know that statistic as well.
Yeah, that would be fun. That would be good to know as well. And just for people to know, like we've been talking a lot kind of behind the scenes about where we're going with the show, what we're going to be doing. And the answer is we're going to be doing stuff. Like there's stuff, like there are plans. We are hoping to do more things and like become bigger, we hope. And so part of that extension will be going via the Modern Market account. You can see that as a co-host. We're going to be doing more things via there. Just trying to figure it out at the moment, to be completely honest with you all, because we're basically two people. Like we don't have like a bigger team, although that may change to some extent in the near future. But yeah, we're just two people running that account, doing the content, doing all the research. But hopefully there'll be more stuff coming via that main account. So please do follow it along to support it, because that's where a lot of our key stuff will be placed moving forward. But that's it from me in terms of the housekeeping. Legendary, love it when you bring up some of those little stats about our show, but also the audience. I love that we get those little extra bits of insight. And I really hope, guys, we appreciate your patience yesterday. The tech is not great when you're operating from a hotel which is gaslighting you about various things, and especially about the internet connection. So I hope today we have it all sorted for you. And that's it. That's it from the housekeeping, from my perspective. Legendary, what do we want to do?
One last thought on that, talking about gaslighting. I saw a post on Reddit, I don't know how credible it is, that basically had a world map and had all the countries and had the term or the word that is most searched for its definition for each individual country. And for the US, according to that statistic, gaslighting is the word where people search the definition for.
Why? That's so funny. I mean, it's definitely something that it wasn't a word before, right? It was just something.
Yeah, I don't know. But the funny thing that stood out, and then we really should get into the show, is that a couple of European and Eastern European countries had the word in common that they looked up the definition for, which was pegging, which I was quite surprised to see that Europe is ranking highly on the kinky scale, looking for words like pegging.
That is hilarious. Very, very funny. I don't know what's going on there in terms of the definitions. Let's get into the definition of quality content. We're going to get into the show right now. We're going to start with the headlines and the price action, as always. And as always, if you would like to follow along, the snapshot is pinned up top. That's where the details are. If you'd like to follow along, please do like it if you find that it brings you some value today. So let's get into it, starting with some of the price action. Maybe let's start with the NFTs today. We've got Bored Apes down 1% at 29.9. We've got Pudgy Penguins down a few percent, dipping beneath 10 ETH after they soared past it in the last couple of days. Got Mutant Apes at 5.8, Azuki's at 6.5, Lil Pudgies at 0.8. Miladies have actually done a relatively big run recently as well, up 50% in the last 7 days, which people haven't really spoken about. They're at 3.6. Captains are up 11% in the last 24 hours. So they're up 5.2. And I missed that move because I sold mine in order to bet on a different project where I thought I could get a 2-for-1 for a captain. So that's unfortunate. Pixelmon up 11%, up at 1.5. Legendary. I remember you speaking about those the other day. Again, these gaming adjacent tokens are just absolutely ripping. With speculation of tokens coming on the back of them. DGods at 3.4, Moonbirds at 2, Creeps at 2.4, CryptoPunks at 57.5. So interesting stuff going on there. That all sounds pretty good. We also have the price action on crypto, where Bitcoin is up 1% at 41.7, ETH down 1% at 2.2K, got Solana at 60. So crypto looking very, very healthy as well. And then in terms of the snapshot headlines, we've got a few headlines here. First, again, Flamingo DAO was at it, one of the most valuable wallets in the whole NFT universe. A huge sweep of 270 ETH in the last 24 hours. All kinds of artists included: Grant Yun, Sam Spratt, A Lot of Money, Deef Beef, Dave Krugman, Claire Silver, and loads more. All of the list is in the snapshot up top. $2.5 million raised by Loopify's Treeverse game to continue the mission of building fun games. That had participation from Animoca Brands, founders and executives from Animoca Brands, Pudgy Penguins, Pixelmon, Pixels Online, and Pixel Vault. So interesting raise there. The Portal white paper has been released. I thought it might be worthwhile having a look at that at some point, given that it's taken up so much people's attention and time on the timeline. And then BlackRock update their filings for spot Bitcoin ETFs with the SEC on Monday. And then a couple of notable sales from around the space. We have a CryptoPunk 3D glasses selling for 80 ETH. That's $179,000. Got an Otherdeed Coda selling for 80.4 ETH. That's $180,000. So pretty a couple of notable sales there. Legendary, that is the price action. Those are the headlines. Anything catching your eye there in terms of the numbers?
Definitely, it has to be Pixelmon for me. Not only 10% up on the day, as you said, but also 48% up on the week. I remember in August, Pixelmon being at a like local low of 0.35 ETH. So love to see that comeback story.
Absolutely. I think the space in general really likes to see the comeback story. And am I right in thinking, is it correct to say that that's another one of those projects with, is it a token absolutely confirmed, or is it just a token rumored at this point?
I think it's strongly rumored. I don't know if there's official confirmation yet.
What does that even mean? Strongly rumored. Is that like something in between confirmation and rumor? Like the
Kind of,
strong.
there has to be more degrees to that, right?
Yeah, I think you're probably
Um,
right. It's like not that means there's not an official tweet on it, but there may be some chat in Discord about it from an official person. Do you think that's fair?
yeah, could be. I don't know the specifics of
Yeah,
that, but
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I definitely love the comeback story. Love the Pixel Vault comeback story as well. If we look at floor prices,
Yeah, do you want to touch on that for a second? I know you
um,
wrote a really awesome thread on GG and which was very well received. Do you want to touch on that for a second?
yeah, absolutely. Happy to touch on Pixel Vault as well. I think the main takeaway is that we've seen multiple Pixel Vault collections rallying, including the planets, including their PFP collection, the meta heroes, including the dots, etc. Which the significance of that to me is that it's actually people now trying to understand the ecosystem more, whether that's already active community members who are doubling up before Reboot, their gaming protocol, and the token GG will launch, or whether that's new people getting into the ecosystem because they're taking the time to dissect what's going on, that I can't be the judge of. But either way, I think it is very positive to see that movement, not only in one specific PV collection, but across so many, again, including the planets, including the meta heroes, the PFPs, including the dots, which will be used to boost the unlocking rate of the planets, which will bear the GG token, which will be vested over 24 months, and the dots will accelerate that. The Pixel Vault Founder Style tokens, all of those collections are moving. And again, it's super complex. And for those who are interested to learn more about that, I did a thread on it. It's pinned on my profile. But the takeaway is that people are obviously investing time in that ecosystem to learn about the different collections and buying multiples, because it's not a singular one that's moving, but it's all of them together.
Yeah, interesting analysis. I think that's probably the most reasonable takeaway, which is the projects, the assets are moving because of the connection to the GG token, which is coming at some point. We can't say when, we don't know when. So that's on the horizon, and that is kind of why everything is moving in the market at the moment. So interesting stuff there. Let's get into one of the headlines. I guess we've started with Portal Coin as the title, so maybe it's worth just touching on that. I have to disclose, I don't know what you did in the end, Legendary, but I invested in the Angel round. Did you do that in the end, or did you not? I can't remember. Or are you still thinking about it, or I don't know if it's closed.
I think it's partly closed, because I think it got to a point where
That's like the strong rumor.
no. It's part. I think it got to the point where it's partly closed because the min ticket size was 10 ETH. I think that was also disclosed publicly. And I think that many people got together to kind of do a co-investment in that, or wanted to go together, which is not really how an angel investment is supposed to work. So I think that they became a bit more strict with the criteria, but I don't know if of today there's still open spots or not in that. I do think that there are open spots. I did not invest in the end. I'm still contemplating whether I want to do it or not, but I ended up not wanting to. Like, I wanted to do it at first, but I did change. I had a change of heart on it.
Yeah, fair enough. Maybe we can talk about some of the pros and cons. I had a really good conversation with someone out here in Miami about the pros and cons. is a little bit of a confusing one. In the end, I decided to make place the bet in some respect, but I think it would be helpful for everyone to understand at least why. How are they getting all this attention? That's one of the key reasons I actually did decide to, because I think they're crushing the attention span economy thing. And when I was reading I mentioned the other day, I've been reading the Kobe articles again that he's written on Substack, which kind of breaks down some of the key tenets of how he has invested in cryptocurrency coins and over the last, I think, almost decade. And he has one specific article on attention, and he talks about how the only real scarce thing in this space is attention. And if you can get attention, then you've got a chance. That's, I think, probably the key takeaway for me. You've got a real chance. Attention is one of the key things, and they've absolutely smashed it from that perspective. And then the other stuff was, we talked the other day about market caps and fully diluted values, and I thought that was all reasonable. And then the other pros were and I'll do the cons as well, just to be transparent. And for the people who are unsure, we actually did a whole show last week where we were like, what's going on? What went on with the Lumi token that they had? They had this thing where it wasn't clear what happened with this previous token they had. Was that all transparent? Then there was a little bit of FUD about, are these partnerships that they've disclosed all real? Because some people were saying, well, no, we're not necessarily partnering with them in this way. Like, it's not 100% clear. So there is some risk attached to it in that respect. Like, it's not clear that all of the headline partnerships are exactly, well, I guess it depends how you define partnership. Sorry. It depends how you define partnership in some respect. So there is a little bit of confusion in that respect, but the numbers seemed to add up. But anyway, the token itself, or the white paper itself, just got released. And so that should be super interesting to people because they want to figure out, well, is this token worth farming? Is it worth all of the tweets on the timeline to try to farm the rewards? And in general, I think it doesn't give you a huge amount. It does give you a few elements of the token. So I'll give you a little bit of a summary of what it does, and then can kind of discuss some of the shortcomings of the white paper, which I think people would want to know more details, to be honest. It says that the Portal token serves many purposes within the network, and here's just a few of them. Remember, the broad goal is to connect different gaming universes together. So it said it should be used for transaction fees. Portal are used to pay for transaction fees and node validation services, platform payments, so you can use Portal in marketplaces such as Magic Eden, or to buy and sell in-game assets in platform games. Governance, so there's a governance element as well, where you can vote and influence the future direction of the Portal coin and platform. Staking as well. So this is like a lot of stuff. Stake Portal to actively participate in game distribution and visibility on the platform. Then exclusive access. So access and purchase exclusive NFTs from our partner network. And then node purchases. Purchase nodes to power the core Portal infrastructure and platform. So quite a substantial and Legendary, I know you know more about token design and stuff. Quite a substantial perspective on what they want to try to achieve with the token. And then in terms of some of the key details, in terms of numbers, I actually thought that there wasn't much good information given publicly, where they say this. They say the token supply will be, there's a single fungible token, there'll be 1 billion Portal tokens. The total supply of Portal will be minted at Genesis and vest to the community treasury on a periodic basis over time. I don't think it's very helpful to say that. Ideally, you would like to know when people vest and when they're vesting. I'm not, because I'm relatively new to stuff, I don't know whether people do offer that information up front right away, but would love to hear your thoughts on just the general attempt of the white paper and some of the key details which I just shared with you, but also the information which they provided on the supply and whether that is sufficient, whether it's not enough. Is that standard practice? What are your thoughts, Legendary?
I think the way they approached it is pretty smart, because if you look at their X content that they created so far, they said, those are the things that they will deliver, one of which will be the white paper, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I would definitely assume that they have more information on the token design and on the tokenomics, on distribution after the TGE. But I think that they're just holding that back for the moment and will announce it as another milestone a bit later on when they will release a bit more info on the tokenomics, because it's just good content to kind of spread that out and not do it all together. I would also argue that investors have a bit more information on the token distribution. Maybe not the full picture of the entire tokenomics and token design, but definitely more than a rough idea on that. And even if you look at their announcement where they say we are proud to release the Portal white paper, it got 6.7 million views within 14 hours. So just feeding you bits and bits of information and holding back like the more relevant points that people definitely will care about. And the token design is definitely something that everyone wants to know, who's somewhat near to that ecosystem. Makes sense for them to be split over multiple posts to just continue keeping that attention game and momentum high and just keep building that traction on the timeline.
Yeah, I mean, I see what you mean, how people might want to split the information out into different bits of content. At the same time, like, this is the white paper. Like, if it's not going to be in the white paper where you're supposed to be able to go to get all of the information, then I don't know where you're supposed to go.
Oh, it will be
So
updated in the white paper, I think. Once they will publish it, they will add it to the white paper and just extend that section a bit. I just think that they are spreading out the information on purpose too. In a similar way, look at how FriendTech looked like in the beginning, and then they added very basic features like, I don't know, bookmarking or highlighting creators or whatever. And everyone was like, "Oh, that's such a genius idea." And I was like, "Nah, they just stripped away basic features from their MVP to add them at a later stage to have that continuity and to make it seem like they have such a strong shipping of new features planned and such a strong execution, when in reality they just took away basic features." And I think it is an analogy that also works for that white paper, where you just strip away some of the things that people would care about and add them at a later point and celebrate it as a success.
yeah, maybe. Is that standard practice? I mean, that sounds, I don't know, it doesn't sound smart to me, but I guess maybe if that's what people do, then that's what people do. But is that what you feel the standard thing to do when it comes to this stuff is? Because I guess
No,
the main
definitely
question
not.
for me, well, I guess the main question for me is trying to figure out like the discrepancy between investor information and public information. Because obviously, as an investor, you do know a lot more of the stuff, and so I'm trying to figure out like when does the public get up to speed? Because that information asymmetry is not, well, you don't want for, for the audience who are not, who don't know all the stuff and would like to know all the stuff. Well, like, when do they get updated to the reasonable point? And I just was kind of wondering, is this a reasonable attempt to do that? Is it an expectation that they'll never get updated? What's your experience with it so far? And what are your thoughts on that?
A couple of points on that. So I don't think that it's necessarily standard practice, but I also don't think that it's something that's like gravely wrong. If you look at going back to the Pixel Vault talk that we just had at the beginning of the show, and you look at the Reboot white paper, you obviously have the
Oh yeah,
token
that's a good
distribution and
example.
everything laid out. But you also have to say that in the case of the GG token, there is NFTs on the market that you can purchase as of right now and put real money into them, in the expectation to get a return to get tokens, to get GG tokens. Whereas with Portal Coin, there's nothing that you can do financially right now to buy NFTs that will give you Portal tokens or anything. The only thing you can do right now is just, if you're not an investor, obviously, that is just grind Portal Coin content on X. So I think as soon as there will be something to do that has financial implications for the public, whether that's another pre-sale, an IDO, or whatever there might be, then that would be the latest point for them to release the token design. But as of right now, it's only investors, angels, etc., who do receive more information, as you just said. There is not like the absolute necessity to have it in the white paper. But although, with that being said, personally, I would have loved to see that in the white paper already. But I also
Yeah.
understand why they just don't want to do it.
Yeah, I don't know. I understand what you mean. I'm glad you brought up the reboot white paper, because that is one we've been paying attention to recently, and I've just brought it up at the same time to take a look at, and I think that's way better. Like, really nicely done, really transparent. I think they actually call it a transparency paper somewhere on their website. Um, and this is what I would expect to see if I was interested, because I just think right now you bring out the white paper, and I kind of take your point, like you want to spread out some of the information. But if you bring out a white paper, you come to the market with a white paper. If I'm looking at that white paper as a potential investor, might as well throw it in the bin, to be honest, because there's no information about the token supply. Well, all it tells you is the supply, but none of the details. So I don't know.
Definitely agree, and even with the reboot white paper / transparency report, there's still stuff in there that's not fully revealed. Like, they've been
Sure.
extremely transparent, but for example, just going back to what I said with the dots, which again, not important to understand all the collections. It's just important for this analogy to understand that the dots are NFTs that accelerate your vesting of GG tokens from your planets. And the dots come in multiple evolutions. They come in 7 evolutions, and they did explain how evolution 1 to 6 work and how much they accelerate your vesting schedule. But for Evo 7, it's not explained yet. So even if you go like fully transparent, you can keep little things to tease and build on in the future. But definitely also agree that I like the white paper / transparency report by Reboot way more than the Portal white paper.
Yeah, absolutely. And just for example, for the people who are listening in, trying to be like, well, what should we be looking out for? Like, at a minimum, you kind of want to know the distribution of the token, try to figure out, and then you can figure out the incentives of each stakeholder. So on the GG side, on the reboot paper, you have like the total supply being 1 billion. You've got the Pixel Vault community at 42%, reboot treasury at 10%, credits and rewards at 10%, launch contributors 7.5%, admin fund 5.5%, and there's a few other ones. And the reason why this is so important, and again, this is from my reading of Kobe's articles the other day, is you have this long list, and sometimes in these papers they try to confuse you with like loads of people, loads of percentages. And then what you can actually do is you can simplify it a little bit more into like team, like where actually are these tokens practically going? Like in the GG one, when it says credits and rewards, who is going to hold those tokens? You need to be asking like, who are the holders? And then you can figure out like, okay, well, what are the incentives of those people? When do they get their tokens and when do they vest? Because when it just says something like admin fund, which is what it says in the GG one, like you have to kind of reallocate these allocations and figure out like, okay, who owns the admin fund then? And if the admin fund's going to pay out to people, it's like, well, okay, well, who is that going to? Is that community? Is it team? Is it market makers? Is it someone else? Like, you can simplify these complex distribution tables so that you can figure out who are the holders of the tokens, and because everyone will be on different vesting schedules as well. So I think that is a helpful kind of thought process, or laying out some of the thought process of how to maybe attack some of these papers when you do see them. In the end, after this kind of live research / a little bit of reading that I looked into, I don't think the Portal Coin one is particularly useful to read into at the moment because of the absence of that distribution stuff. Although it's interesting to see that it's quite an ambitious token in terms of what it seeks to do. So I think we'll probably have to look at it again when you have the distribution and talk about it again in that respect. But that's it for me on the token legendary. I think unless you want to do more on it, we can probably go to another headline.
One last question, if you're comfortable with answering it. You
Sure.
obviously said you took part in that angel round, and you said you also saw like different pros and cons for that. What was ultimately the reason for you to be like, yep, I'm going to participate in this?
Good question. So I think the key thing for me in investing was two things. One was the market cap and FTV, which they will be attempting to launch at, as well as the the way that they have captured attention in this market. I value the attention exceptionally highly, because it's one of the scarcest commodities in this space. And then the third thing, which is more like a supportive aspect, because those two things are like purely financial, like quite cold analytical. It's just like, look, the numbers seemed to make sense to me. The um the attention was really strong. And then the third thing was like, I genuinely do think they've done some pretty cool stuff. Like the end, I mean, again, it's completely unrelated, not from the gaming universe, but like the end collaboration was like really, really premium. They've done really good stuff there. And for whatever people have said about the past, and there was like that uncertainty about the token, they've managed to cultivate this community of people who are like hyper passionate. And I do think that matters when it comes to those things. So I think it's those 2/3 things that kind of pushed me over the edge. I was willing to place a bet. And actually, an interesting framework, again, I think this would be helpful to people to hear, is that Kobe also wrote an article on probabilistic thinking. I'm just going to lay out exactly how I thought about this for people's thoughts. I want to hear your thoughts, especially on this legendary, in a second. So he said, you've got to think about this stuff probabilistically. And what that means is like you lay out the different scenarios that could happen and attribute a percentage likelihood of those things happening. So there are essentially four things that I thought could happen with this token launch, but this is basically applicable to any token launch, so it should be helpful to anyone trying to analyze any situation here. One, my investment goes up because the token goes up. So that's like one potential. So that will be determined by a variety of things, where people are, like the way that they launched the token, what market cap, what FDV, the initial circulating supply, etc. All of those things and their execution. So the second option is that it could stay the same, and I don't make any money on it. It just stays the same. The third option is that it goes down, and I lose money. And you would think that those are the only three options, but I was trying to think probabilistically, trying to think outside the box. And I was like, well, the fourth option is that it's a rug and it just doesn't exist. It doesn't come to fruition. Somehow the money literally just disappears and never comes to market. And based on the analysis of all of those things, I thought, okay, the probability of the money either staying the same or going up. So I thought the probability of the money going up is pretty high. Say, I don't know, 50 to, I mean, personally, I think it was probably even higher, like maybe 70% based on my estimation. Then you think, okay, well, what if it stays the same? Okay, maybe another 10 something percent, 10 to 15. And maybe this is ambitious, but this was just my estimation, right? So it's just the thought process I'm laying out. Then it was like, okay, what if it goes down? And I just thought with the numbers, the way it was framed, I thought it was a very low likelihood of that. And I actually thought there was probably a higher likelihood of them rugging based on how the numbers played out and how there's been like certain types of FUD going on. I would almost place it. I was kind of messing around, but I was wondering whether like maybe it's equal, like the likelihood of them rugging versus it going down. But both of those added together, I didn't think was more than 10%. So it was like 5%. So it's like, well, okay, if I'm 90 to 95% in the money's going to stay the same or go up, versus rug/money go down at 5%, then it's probably worth the bet. So that's how I've been thinking about some of these things. I would love to hear your thoughts, Legendary. Funky, I see your hand raised. Would love to know what you think about this kind of probabilistic framework of thinking about these things. And see Red coming to the stage too. Maybe they have some thoughts in just a moment. Legendary first.
I love this train of thought. Could speak for hours about that. It's very, very close to the topic that I written my master thesis about actually years back. And I did a similar thing where I basically tried to also calculate the EV for, and for my own potential investment in the protocol coin. The only thing that I added to that was the opportunity cost and other opportunities that I see
I see.
that I could follow with that, where I arrived at a bit of a higher EV, but in a world where I just had more access to liquid capital, that probabilistic thinking model would have dictated that I would have had to participate as well. And it's a very, very smart way, in my opinion, to approach things by just trying to have a mental model where you have those different scenarios mapped out and try to get good at forecasting those percentages to figure out the potential EV and just place your bets in place like that.
Yeah, that's a good point. It obviously doesn't take into account the opportunity cost. So I accept that that is something which you may have wanted to factor in, and not something which I needed to factor in. But I think that's an excellent point. You obviously want to figure out whether there are other better things going on at this moment in time. So completely take that point. Funky, your hand is raised. Saw you nodding along, I think, with some of those thoughts. Would love to hear your thoughts here. What are your thoughts, friend?
GM, everyone. Yeah, I just wanted to chime in on the probabilistic thinking thing as a general nerd. One of my absolute favorite books is Taleb's Anti-Fragile, and he really encourages probabilistic thinking. And one of the things that I find it's particularly useful for is defraying irrational fears. I know we're getting a little bit away from this stuff with you guys are talking about, but just I'm a big fan of that as a mental model. And I should use probabilistic thinking, not financial advice, in listening to you guys, because how many times have I been up here on stage? You guys have talked about something and I just watch it pump away and I never even like took a chance or a flyer. So love everything you guys are discussing today, but the probabilistic thinking is a very, very powerful way to assess investment strategies and many other things in life. So I just wanted to chime in with that.
Definitely can second that. Anti-Fragile by Taleb. Excellent, excellent, excellent read on that topic.
Absolutely. Appreciate your thoughts, man, and appreciate the support as always. Really, really agree with that framework and that kind of line of thinking. Legendary, I think we're probably maybe given that maybe we're doing a little bit of a show that's to do with raising and tokens and things like that. Shall we go to the Loopify headline next and maybe discuss that a little bit? I know you're closer to the gaming stuff. Maybe you've got some thoughts there.
Yeah, let's do it. Happy to take that away. Loopify is building Treeverse and Capsule Heroes. Loopify obviously has been in this space for quite a while, has done tremendously well also in the last bull run, and has founded the Endless Clouds company to build out his gaming ecosystem. And yesterday, Loop announced that $2.5 million plus raise from a group of investors, which included XX and employees from Animoca Brands. Very, very smart way to word that, because my reading is that it's not an official investment by Animoca Brands, but it's XX and employees who participate in that. Very, very smart way to word that. GameFi Ventures, what else stood out? Tupank's Capital, Skyvision Capital, and then quite a lot of interesting individuals, including G-Funk from Pixel Vault, Alex Becker, Hunter Orell, Yatsio, Dingaling, Elliot Trades, Lucanets, quite a few people who participated in that race as well. And it's one of the races I would have loved to participate in. But I was acting a bit too slow on that, so I missed it.
Yeah, I'm upset about this one. I would have liked to be involved in this one. You mentioned, so I think we're going to do two things for the rest of the show, because we've kind of seemed to have gone down the kind of raising token line. So I think one, Legendary, you made an interesting point yesterday, I think, on the timeline, where you said it seemed like a low number to you. So we'd love to kind of get into the mechanics of why you thought that in just a second. And then second, I think it would be interesting for people to understand, like, how, like, when you mentioned that you would have loved to participated, but you didn't on this occasion, like, how can people participate if possible? Like, I was speaking to someone yesterday here, and one of the things they said was like, yeah, right now it seems to be the case that getting token allocations or investing in these kind of seed rounds or angel rounds is maybe one of the best, like the best plays at the moment in their opinion. So I guess maybe let's get into a little bit of a discussion on that. Maybe talk about some of the ones that we are doing in the last 10 minutes of the show.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Let's do it. I didn't say it on the timeline. I said it in private that I thought that the 2.5 mil were a low number. But I have no no worries. I have no issue saying that in public as well. I do think it's a low number if you look at the people who participated in it. But I also think that they are well funded, and that it was more to get the support of some very, very influential people in the space and just get them on board, more than it was about actually raising a significant or massive amount of capital. So I think this would be my reasoning or my explanation for why I think that it wasn't like, I don't know, a 10 mil raise or whatever.
Yeah, fair enough. I think that's a pretty fair. Like there are other people who've may raise more than that. So yeah, I don't disagree that it's a relatively low raise. I do think that there needs to be something to distinguish between the timeline and private chat, so I don't confuse that moving forward. Okay, that is interesting. What I want to do now, I'm going to bring you up to speed with what else has been going on in the space in the last 24 hours. Going to hit the Web3 roundup and then create a corner from the snapshot. And then we're going to get into a little bit of a discussion on what it takes to participate in some of these rounds, why we are doing some of these rounds, and just go behind the scenes a little bit in terms of our thinking on how to get some of this seed deal action and some of the challenges, some of the positives, some of the negatives. So we'll do that in just a moment. But in order to bring you up to speed, here we go from the snapshot. Here, this is the rest of the news that's happened in the last 24 hours. We had ThirdWeb. This was a strange one. ThirdWeb announced smart contract problem with all contracts deployed before November 2022 of 2023. ThirdWeb, I think, provide this kind of automatic smart contract service. So like you can just mint with them and do various things with them. Seemed to be some huge vulnerability, which they announced yesterday. So the developers have to take drastic steps pretty immediately. Didn't see much about that on the timeline. Number two, Zeneca announces new focus on community at Zen Academy whilst backing away from the business pursuit. This was interestingly worded. He said, I simply don't want to run a business. I don't want to build a company. I want to build a community. So that's what we are doing, running Zen Academy back 21 style. Interesting kind of change in business direction for the Zen Academy. Next, I saw rumors yesterday emerge of Qatar's sovereign wealth fund wanting to buy $500 billion of Bitcoin. This came from a couple of places. Obviously, a huge amount of capital, but I definitely just wanted to bring that up. But they are just rumors at the moment. Next, the Jito airdrop details were revealed. Definitely, you can go to that website if you have been participating with Jito on Solana. We've been speaking about that for some time, and the cutoff date was something as late as November the 25th, 2023. That's only last week or 2 weeks ago, and I'm pretty sure we were speaking about that even before then. So hopefully people might participate in some way. Moving into the Creator Corner, Noble Gallery reveals the art for season 2 finale on the 6th. That is tomorrow. They've got some really, really awesome artists, one of whom is Jack Butcher. It's got a pretty cool collection dropping for 0.16, and there's only going to be 55. So I don't know if that's going to be a gas war, but I'm actually here for it. I'm kind of looking forward to some gas wars in the next bull market. Little pudgies have been added to Blend protocol for buy now, pay later and lending. And finally, Rec Guy announces a secretive snapshot taken on the 16th of October. We don't know what that's for yet, but that's interesting to see from them. That is the rest of the news from the Web3 Roundup and the Creator Corner. Legendary, shall we get into the final discussion on some of these seed deals and what's going on with them?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's do it. How do you want to approach it?
Let's say every seed deal you've ever invested. No. I think let's well, I think we've got a couple on at the moment. Maybe you've got more than me, I'm not sure. It might be worth explaining what you are in on, but then also kind of thinking about what it's taken to get to the point where you are able to participate. Because I remember speaking to you a while ago, talking about how, like, it takes a lot to get to a point where you're able to be in the conversation for these things, right? And you mentioned with Loopify's Treeverse that, you know, it's one of the ones you wanted, you would have loved to have been in on, but you know, you can't get all of them. And sometimes you'll see the same names over and over and over again. And it's great for them, obviously. And they've obviously built up a really good reputation as investors and built themselves up to a position where they're able to participate. I just wanted to hear your perspective on, like, now that you've become one of the people that is considered for this, what it kind of took you to get there for the people who are interested in that type of deal flow.
Sure, absolutely. I think you made the most important point early in the show when you said that the only scarce thing in this space is attention, and capital is not necessarily the scarcest thing in crypto. If you look at Blast and look at the fact that we saw more than 700 mil move into that multi-sig within a week, there's a lot of people who have money. So money, if you have a good product, is not necessarily the issue, but more it's about having and getting the attention, or being able to like contribute otherwise to rounds that you want to participate in. And to be quite frank about it, in the last bull run in 2021, while I didn't focus that much on content creation, etc., I didn't have I had almost zero conversation about participating in rounds. It was more like I had a friend who, you know, had a lot of reach, who maybe was able to participate in a round and sign a SAFT agreement for future tokens, and was able and allowed to sell that SAFT or part of his future token claim on the secondary market, which is also not something that every raise allows you to do. So that was like more getting in those deals by proxy, whereas this time, where I just built my brand, built myself as a content creator, managed to position myself differently on the timeline. Obviously, also have more experience than I had last time. I do have those conversations sometimes directly with founders when I learn about a potential round that they are doing and that I am offered to participate in. There's companies in this space who focus on basically managing those rounds for other people and taking sometimes a commission for doing that, and they reach out to key opinion leaders, thought leaders, to people with money, to founders, etc., and try to coordinate those rounds. But to me, the biggest difference, and again, something I'm going to be quite frank about, is just the fact that I, built a legendary brand focused on the content creation, and that's not only helpful if you want to get in or be considered for potential raises, but also obviously for having partnerships with companies. I mean, it's quite obvious that I'm wearing the Mintify badge, for example, and we have Evan, the founder and CEO of Mintify, in the audience with us right now. And Evan and I have had so many calls, and the way how Evan became aware of me was due to the content that I created. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been aware of me, and we wouldn't have had those calls. And I wouldn't wear the badge right now. So I would say that this is the biggest differentiator to me personally in this cycle, if we think this is a bull run to the last cycle.
Yeah, I think that's a really helpful lesson or helpful helpful insight, I would say, into how some of this stuff works. And the thing that stood out to me there was that it's not a question of capital. Like, it's just not a question of capital. Although some people may be more stretched than others. I mean, we're part of a universe that's just sent $700 million to Blast just for fun, basically. So the money is there, and that's basically idle capital, right? It's just money that people were sitting around with, not going to do anything with. Which means that that's exactly the type of capital, the dry powder that people might want to allocate to a nice opportunity should it come their way. So the question is not about the whether you can get the money. It's about which people can you strategically pick in order to push, in order to, you know, help maybe advise on the product, but also when it comes to getting the information out there about it, who can you pick to help do that? So I completely agree with you that the attention is the scarcest commodity. And if people wanted to, or if people aspire to participating in those types of things in future, then you've got to position yourself, take the responsibility and position yourself in a way, put yourself out there, position yourself in a way that shows you as a quality conveyor of information. Don't want to say content creator, because maybe that has some connotations to it, which is like, maybe you don't see yourself as a content creator, but you have to find a position and show that people care about the information which you share. So I think that's very important. And then the only additional thing I would add, Legendary, that you didn't mention, is that I think it's very, very helpful, and we've said this before in other contexts, but just to have a small network of people, otherwise known as friends, who will like put you forward as well when when opportunities come their ways. So like technically, I don't think in any of the most recent things I've been involved in, I'm not certain that any were super direct. I think Inspect was via you. This Portal is actually public, right? Portal is a hybrid. It's kind of public, so anyone could apply, but obviously help to be able to talk about it with a few close people. The Mintivice stuff we're both doing. I think we were actually both in contact with Evan simultaneously, and then we both talked to each other about it, and then we both realized, like, oh, cool. we didn't realize that we were both talking to Evan at the same time. So that was pretty funny, but it was really great to come to agreement with Evan, because what Mintify are doing is pretty cool as well. So yeah, I think it's a little bit of all of those things where you've got to put yourself out there, you've got to find your niche, find your position, show that people care about your work. Then also just having a couple of people that you can rely on, aka friends, is pretty helpful. What are your thoughts on that, Legendary?
Yeah, the good old F word. No kidding. Friends are super important for that. Obviously, you can't be on top of all opportunities, and it's often the case that if you talk to someone, sometimes the question comes, you know, do you know everyone? Is anyone else who from your circle would be suitable for that investment? And that's just the way the cookie crumbles. Yeah.
Absolutely. Makes a lot of sense. And just a final maybe reflection on this is that I've seen this when it comes to funding of different types of things. So for example, I mean, I'm part of Lil Nouns DAO, which is an awesome DAO. They do funding. Also been funded from different routes in the past now. So I've got like long-term relationships with Chimpers, long-term relationship with Lil Nouns DAO, relatively long-term relationship with Gondi at the moment. And one of the things I found when people don't get what they want, there's like this really instinctive defensive mechanism that people have. And sometimes I can feel it like welling up inside of me when someone either questions you, or they don't give you what you want immediately, or they're like pushing you much harder. And I just think like you've got to suppress that feeling of either resentment or jealousy, or, you know, that defensive mechanism that kicks in where you're like, why are they attacking me? Why am I not getting the thing that I want? What's like, people just get very, very defensive, I've observed. And actually, you don't need to win a negotiation, in my opinion. Like, a lot of people try to win. And actually, this is what I used to do in the past. And someone said this to me, and it kind of felt like a slap in the face, but I accepted the slap in the face happily, because I was thinking, like, you're not supposed to try to win the negotiation. It's not about winning. It's not about getting the best deal for you and then therefore making the other person feel like they're losing. It's about like coming to this nice middle point. And if it's not your time right now, it will be in the future, but you've got to come to like a more middle point. I know I'm straddling two things here now, because I'm talking about getting partnerships versus getting deal flow, and it's not quite the same thing. But I think there is scope for people to just like be a little bit less defensive, a little bit less annoyed about stuff, roll with the punches a little bit, and be a bit more open. Final thoughts, Legendary, as we come to a close on that.
Just building on the very last point that you said, and on the jealousy that you mentioned, I think it's also important to just, chill a bit. And if it's the first bull run that you're entering, you don't need to make it in the first bull run. Like, the market moves in cycle. It's not the first, it's not going to be the last cycle. You just have all the time to learn in this bull market. You have all the time to learn throughout and position yourself throughout the next bear market. And then in the bull market following that, you will be in a position, if that is your goal, to get access to those deals, etc. It was the same story that I had in the last bull market. I saw people making heaps of money, multiple 7 figures opportunity. And I was like, fuck, I would love to have, participate in those investments. I saw people printing with Blur, LooksRare, and all the others. And it's just, they've been there, they build their audiences, they build whatever their focus was. It takes time to get in the position, and you just need to remove that stress element that you absolutely have to make it in this cycle. You have to make it in your first cycle. It's not the last, and just plan this as a more long-term thing, and it will work out.
Like it. Like that kind of final reflection. It's been a thoughtful show, kind of like the direction we went in, kind of focusing a little bit more on tokens, allocations, investing in seed rather than the NFT market itself. But as a reminder to everyone, we do this every single day, 7 a.m. Eastern time, 12 p.m. GMT, every day of the week, Monday to Friday. We focus on the NFT market, the crypto market, and just other ways to make money on the internet. And this seems to be one of the ways at the moment via these seed rounds. So happy to bring that insight and thought and conversation to you this morning. We hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you so much for joining us. We will be with you again tomorrow, of course. Have a wonderful day. Take care. Bye-bye.